Okay, who brought the dog?
Ghostbusters wasn't just another comedy. It was a supernatural gamble that nearly drowned in its own slime. But behind the proton packs and the punchlines, it was chaos baked into every frame. The Marshmallow Man almost sank the movie. The Ectomobile nearly collapsed before it even rolled. And Huey Lewis dragged the theme song into court. These are 20 weird facts about Ghostbusters. And buried in the slime and the scramble, it all started with Dan Aykroyd's wildest idea. This wasn't just funny. It was a blockbuster exorcism in New York. Number 1. Dan Aykroyd's first draft of Ghostbusters didn't open in New York. It opened in the cosmos. His script imagined ghost hunters as interdimensional warriors, strapping on helmets, blasting proton packs through wormholes, and chasing spirits across space and time. Entire planets were haunted. Entire universes needed saving. But in 1982, Hollywood didn't have the technology or the budget. Aykroyd's vision would have cost hundreds of millions, a number so impossible the project was nearly dead on arrival. Enter Harold Ramis and Ivan Reitman. Together, they took the madness and cut it down to something grounded. One team, one city, one haunting. New York replaced outer space. Skyscrapers became fortresses. The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man became the cosmic monster crashing through town. Scaling down didn't shrink the story, it sharpened it. Out of abandoned galaxies came a scrappy New York comedy that conquered the world.
I'm sorry.
Number 2. Dan Aykroyd never imagined Ghostbusters without John Belushi. He pictured his Blues Brothers partner as the ultimate wild ghost chaser, messy, unpredictable, and hilarious. But in March 1982, before the script could come alive, Belushi died of an overdose at just 33. Aykroyd was shattered. That grief never left the movie. When the effects team designed Slimer, Aykroyd asked them to channel Belushi's spirit. They gave the green ghoul a gluttonous appetite, a sloppy grin, and an energy that never slowed down. On set, Aykroyd even called him the Belushi Ghost. Slimer wasn't just comic relief. He was a haunting, a living tribute to the friend who should have been there. Rewritten as a ghost forever stuffing his face and crashing through walls. Belushi didn't live to suit up as a Ghostbuster. Instead, he became one of cinema's strangest immortals, a ghost who never leaves the party.
Disgusting blob. I'm gonna have to hold it myself.
Number 3. When Dan Aykroyd first wrote Winston Zeddemore, he wasn't a sidekick. He was a decorated Air Force demolition expert with pages of backstory, a character meant to stand shoulder to shoulder with Venkman, Ray, and Egon. The role was tailored for Eddie Murphy, whose rising star power and fast-talking charisma could have made Winston a fan favorite, but Murphy chose Beverly Hills Cop instead. The script was quickly rewritten. Winston's elaborate introduction was cut, his lines reduced, his arrival pushed to halfway through the film. The spotlight shifted to Bill Murray, whose improvisation ate up the oxygen in every scene. Ernie Hudson, who signed on thinking he'd landed the role of a lifetime, was stunned to find his part gutted by the time cameras rolled. He still delivered grounding and heart, but Winston went from leader to afterthought. What could have been the story of 4 equals became the tale of 3 stars, and one Ghostbuster who deserved more. Number 4. When Sigourney Weaver auditioned for Dana Barrett, she didn't read the script, she transformed. Crawling across the floor, snarling, and miming her body turning into one of Gozer's terror dogs, she stunned the room. Ivan Reitman watched, startled and a little frightened. Weaver wasn't just acting, she was possessed. It was bold, it was weird, and it was exactly what the film needed. Fresh off Alien, she brought both strength and vulnerability, able to play the romantic foil to Bill Murray while holding her own against demons and chaos. One terrifying audition turned her from contender to perfect fit, the human heart inside a world overrun with ghosts.
Hello? That's a different look for you, isn't it?
Are you the Keymaster?
Not that I know of.
Number 5. Bill Murray never signed on the dotted line. Columbia wanted a contract. Murray shrugged it off. Instead, he gave a verbal promise. He'd do Ghostbusters if the studio funded his passion project, The Razor's Edge. Then, he vanished to France. Weeks before filming, no one knew if he would show. Ivan Reitman sweated through sleepless nights. The studio braced for collapse. And then, on day 1 of production, Murray walked in like he'd always been part of the plan. No contract, no guarantees. Just a grin and an endless stream of improvisation. The studio gambled everything on a handshake. And somehow, Murray delivered one of the most iconic comedy performances ever, without ever signing his name.
And may I see this storage facility?
No,
And why not, Mr. Venkman?
because you did not use the magic word.
What is the magic word, Mr. Venkman?
Please.
Hey, please.
Number 6. In 1983, Columbia Pictures agreed to bankroll Ghostbusters. But just as production ramped up, Columbia was bought by Coca-Cola. The soda giant couldn't believe they were inheriting a $30 million gamble about ghost hunters in New York. Executives demanded meetings. Some wanted the plug pulled. For weeks, the film hung by a thread. Ivan Reitman and Dan Aykroyd fought back, insisting it could be a hit. Had Coke won, Ghostbusters might have died in development. Instead, the project limped forward. Not because the studio believed in it, but because Reitman refused to let it go. The irony? Coke almost canceled a comedy that would go on to become one of the most profitable pop culture machines of the 80s.
Come on, I want to talk to Dana. Dana. Can I talk to Dana?
Number 7. The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man wasn't CGI. He was a stuntman in a $20,000 foam suit, tromping through miniature New York sets built like dollhouses. Each building had to be wired with pyrotechnics, crumbled on cue, and destroyed in one take, because once it fell, there was no resetting. 3 suits were made, and all of them were destroyed for the film. Ivan Reitman was terrified. A giant marshmallow mascot stomping through Manhattan could turn the movie into a joke. At the first test screening, he sat frozen, waiting for laughs in all the wrong places. Instead, the audience shrieked at the library ghost, and then erupted when Stay Puft appeared, cheering for the absurdity. Relief washed over Reitman. What he feared as the movie's downfall became its crown jewel, a monster both terrifying and sweet, burned forever into pop culture. The Marshmallow Man didn't sink Ghostbusters, he saved it. Number 8. Filming at 55 Central Park West, Dana Barrett's apartment building, turned Manhattan upside down. Streets clogged, traffic stretched to Columbus Circle, and furious New Yorkers leaned on their horns. One angry bystander stormed onto the set to complain. Sci-fi legend Isaac Asimov. He hated that his neighborhood was gridlocked for a ghost comedy. Dan Aykroyd, a lifelong fan, raced over and soothed him the only way he could, by gushing about Asimov's books until the author cracked a smile. The chaos of New York became part of the film's soul. Ghosts weren't chasing people in a quiet backlot. They were shutting down real streets, with the city's pulse beating right through the movie. Number 9. The very first scare, the ghost that explodes from the New York Public Library, almost didn't make it into the movie. Studio executives argued it was too scary for a comedy. Worried families would walk out before the laughs even started. Ivan Reitman fought for it. He knew the film needed that jolt of terror to set the stakes. Without it, the ghosts would just feel silly. The gamble paid off. That librarian's sudden transformation sent audiences screaming, and then laughing in relief as the Ghostbusters bolted for their lives. In one scene, the movie proved its formula, horror and comedy colliding in a single breath. Number 10. Believe it or not, Columbia nearly couldn't use the name Ghostbusters. The title was already owned by Filmation, the company behind a goofy 1970s kids show with a gorilla sidekick. Lawsuits loomed, and Columbia scrambled for alternatives. For weeks, production materials bore placeholders like Ghost Smashers and Ghost Breakers. The actors even filmed entire scenes shouting the wrong name, unsure what would stick. Bill Murray cracked jokes about it, but Ivan Reitman was panicked. You can't build a blockbuster if your title sounds like a cheap Saturday morning cartoon. Finally, Columbia struck a deal at the last minute, paying Filmation to secure the rights. The movie could be called what it was meant to be called, Ghostbusters. The irony came later. When the animated spin-off launched in 1986, Columbia had to name it The Real Ghostbusters, a tongue-in-cheek reminder of just how close they'd come to losing one of the greatest titles in film history. Number 11. The Ghostbusters ride was almost a disaster. Dan Aykroyd pictured a black ambulance hearse hybrid bristling with purple lights, sirens, and wild gadgets. Less ghost hunting machine, more carnival float. It was flashy, bizarre, and would have turned the movie into parody. So the crew scrapped the circus car and dug up a battered 1959 Cadillac Miller Meteor ambulance. They painted it white, slapped on ladders, wiring, and that roof rack packed with mysterious tech. Suddenly, it wasn't ridiculous. It was iconic. A mix of junkyard salvage and sci-fi wonder. But the car had its own ghost. Even with 2 versions built, both broke down constantly. Mechanics worked around the clock just to coax the Ecto-1 through each scene. By the final day, it was held together with more luck than metal. And yet, when it rolled across the Manhattan Bridge, siren wailing, none of that mattered. The Ectomobile didn't just carry the Ghostbusters, it became one of them. Number 12. Peter Venkman's sarcasm wasn't in the script, it was Bill Murray. Almost every line he spoke was improvised. He cracked cracked jokes, rewrote scenes on the fly, and never delivered the same line twice. For Ivan Reitman, editing became chaos. How do you cut a movie when the lead refuses to stick to a script? But Murray's unpredictability was lightning in a bottle. It turned Venkman into the dry, smirking heart of the film. What could have been a mess became legend. Fans still quote lines Murray invented on the spot. Proof that sometimes the funniest dialogue comes from chaos, not planning.
People think they're seeing ghosts, and they call these bozos who conveniently show up to deal with the problem.
Everything was fine with our system until power grid was shut off by Dickless here.
They caused an explosion.
Is this true? Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
Number 13. Ray and Winston once had their own side adventure, set in a haunted military outpost called Fort Detmering. In the script, the pair investigated the garrison, where Ray encountered a female ghost who quite literally unbuckled his belt. The full sequence was filmed, costumes, set, everything. But when editors trimmed the story, the subplot disappeared. What remained was just a single shot, slipped into the film's montage. Ray lying in bed, eyes rolling back in bliss as a ghost hovers above him. Without context, the moment baffled audiences for decades. Was it a dream? A gag? A ghostly one-night stand? The truth is stranger. It was the leftover scrap of a deleted storyline, a spectral romance that collapsed into one of the weirdest fragments in comedy history. Number 14. The rooftop battle with Gozer wasn't always the finale. In early drafts, the Ghostbusters didn't win so easily. They were sucked into the spirit world, battling armies of ghosts in a nightmarish dimension. It was darker, stranger, and would have cost a fortune. Ivan Reitman pulled it back. He wanted something tighter, funnier, and grander. The team facing off against a godlike villain above New York. The Ghost Army became a single showdown. The spirit world became the Manhattan skyline. By simplifying, Reitman turned an overstuffed ending into an iconic climax. Instead of ghosts without faces, we got the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, a finale equal parts absurd and epic.
Go get her, Ray!
Number 15. The Ghostbusters theme was as famous as the film itself, and just as controversial. When Ivan Reitman was editing, he temp-tracked scenes with Huey Lewis's chart-topper I Want a New Drug. The groove was perfect. Upbeat, catchy, instantly recognizable. Reitman even asked Lewis to write the official theme. Lewis declined. The job went to Ray Parker Jr., who had only days to deliver. Working against the clock, Parker came up with Who You Gonna Call? A chorus so sticky it rewired pop culture overnight. The song shot to number 1 and became inseparable from the movie. But its similarity to I Want a New Drug was undeniable. Huey Lewis's publishers sued, claiming Parker had lifted the riff. The case was settled quietly out of court, but the echoes lingered. The irony? A song born in a panic, inspired by a late-night commercial, went from lawsuit bait to one of the most iconic anthems in film history. Number 16. Harold Ramis didn't pluck Egon Spengler out of thin air. He built him from scraps of memory and chance encounters. Egon came from a Hungarian exchange student Ramis remembered from his childhood, a name so unusual it felt instantly scientific. Spengler was lifted from Oswald Spengler, the German philosopher who wrote The Decline of the West, giving the character a cerebral, almost brooding edge. Even Egon's look wasn't invented in Hollywood. Ramis admitted he copied it straight from a man he once saw in an architectural journal. The tall frame, the slicked back hair, the severe glasses. The result was unforgettable. A character who looked like he'd stepped out of a lab and carried the weight of history on his shoulders. Egon wasn't just another Ghostbuster. He was the odd genius whose name alone sounded like it belonged on a chalkboard full of equations. Number 17. By 1983, Industrial Light and Magic was booked solid with Return of the Jedi and Indiana Jones. That left Ghostbusters with nowhere to turn for its dozens of ghost effects. Ivan Reitman called Richard Edlund, a veteran from ILM, who made a wild proposal: build a brand new studio just for this movie. Columbia and MGM funded the gamble, and Boss Film Studios was born. Working around the clock, Edlund's team built terror dogs, proton beams, and the infamous slime, all under crushing deadlines. The experiment paid off. Boss Film not only pulled off Ghostbusters, it went on to define effects for Die Hard, Big Trouble in Little China, and Batman Returns. One risky ghost comedy didn't just change the box office, it changed the industry itself.
Are you a god?
No.
Then
Number 18. The Ghostbusters headquarters wasn't a set. It was a real firehouse in New York. Hook and Ladder 8 in Tribeca. Its red doors and brick walls became a character of their own, anchoring the fantasy in something recognizably real. Fans never let it go. For decades, they've left marshmallows, flowers, proton pack props, and handwritten tributes at its doors. After September 11th, firefighters stationed there became local heroes, and the Ghostbusters symbol outside took on new meaning. The building still stands today, as much a part of New York's mythology as the Empire State Building. The ghosts may be fiction, but the firehouse is forever. Number 19. When Ghostbusters opened in June 1984, critics weren't impressed. Some called it uneven. Others dismissed it as a noisy special effects cartoon with no heart. The studio braced for a flop. Audiences had other plans. Word of mouth exploded. Lines wrapped around theaters as people returned again and again. By midsummer, Ghostbusters had overtaken Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom at the US box office. By the end of its run, it had grossed nearly $300 million worldwide, the highest earning comedy of the decade. The skeptics couldn't ignore it. Kids wore proton packs for Halloween. "Who you gonna call?" turned into a playground chant. Even critics who'd rolled their eyes at first were forced to admit the film had tapped into something bigger than reviews. What looked like a risky gamble on paper became a cultural juggernaut. The critics doubted it. The audience made it immortal. Number 20. Hollywood blockbusters usually take years. Ghostbusters had 12 months. Columbia handed Ivan Reitman $30 million with one condition. The movie had to be in theaters by June 1984. That left a single year to write, cast, shoot, edit, and finish every effect. Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, and Reitman locked themselves in a house on Martha's Vineyard for 3 frantic weeks to hammer out the script. Then cameras rolled immediately, with Richard Edlund's brand new effects studio racing in parallel. Deadlines were brutal. Nights blurred into mornings, but somehow the impossible schedule held. By summer '84, proton packs were firing on the big screen, and what could have been a train wreck became one of the most successful comedies ever made. Bonus fact: Ghostbusters didn't just dominate theaters. It invaded living rooms, toy aisles, and Saturday mornings. Within a year, kids were blasting plastic proton streams in backyards, collecting action figures of Slimer and Stay Puft, and spooning marshmallow-shaped cereal from boxes stamped with the logo. The animated series The Real Ghostbusters carried the franchise through the late 80s, spawning comic books, spin-off toys, lunchboxes, and video games that stretched the ghost hunt far beyond the big screen. For an entire generation, busting ghosts wasn't just a movie memory, it was part of everyday play. What began as a risky comedy became a merchandising empire, proof that Ghostbusters wasn't just watched, it was lived. Ghostbusters started as a bloated space epic nobody could afford. It nearly collapsed under lawsuits, studio doubts, and impossible deadlines, and still became the highest-grossing comedy of the decade. It gave us Slimer, Stay Puft, and a theme song that never left the radio. It turned Bill Murray's improvisation into legend, and it proved that a risky, ridiculous idea could become the cornerstone of pop culture. If this one still makes you laugh or hum that song without thinking, drop a comment. Tell us what classic we should bust open next, because ghosts may fade, but this movie, it refuses to leave. And when there's something strange in the neighborhood, you already know who you're gonna call.